Hello, I'm Robert, and this is about this news story that is running. That is scaring lots of people, saying that the Mayan calendar is going to move to the next backturn on 21st of June, and it's not true at all. There's no sense in it. So the background to this is that someone called Paolo, he did a tweet on Twitter. Paolo, from his tweet, didn't understand how the Julian and Gregorian calendars work, and he hadn't bothered to look them up in Google, and he made a big mistake. And then the Mirror ran Paolo's tweet as a news story. So can you imagine? You just go there and you just maybe you're drunk, maybe you're just a bit tired, maybe you're just having fun, and you put a tweet up on your Twitter feed, and then next thing you know, the Mirror is running it as a big news story. That's what happened to him. So he deleted his Twitter account, and he must be very embarrassed about what happened. And then this is running in all these big sensationalist press. And this is what you see if you go to Google and you search for Mayan calendar 2020. Then you will see just these three big news stories across the top of the page. And it's all based on this tweet. There was a mistake. Try Mayan. And there's nothing at all to indicate there, you see? And there's nothing at all there to indicate that any of this is fake news, or to indicate what kind of newspapers these are. And these are people who will just run a story based on a tweet by someone they don't know anything about. They won't have interviewed him, won't have talked to him. Just someone found his tweet on Twitter and ran a story about it. That's all there is to it. I know they don't talk because they ran a story about me once. And they said that I had, well, they've done a couple about me. They ran a story about me saying that I had predicted an asteroid was about to hit Earth and cause untold devastation. And I was saying the opposite in the article that they ran a story about. So, and they never contacted me to say, did you say that Earth is about to be hit by a big asteroid? They just ran a big story about it. So that's the sort of people these are. Just pick things up and make stuff up sometimes, like they did with me. And so it's just a mistake in this case. He didn't check how calendars worked. He deleted his mistaken tweet, and the Mayan date was 21st December 2012. It was a celebration for Mayans, and the Mayans don't say that the world ends. They've never said that. Mayans have never said that the world's going to end. It's another meme thing I did. The story is wrong. 13th Bacton starts in 2012 in our calendar. Here are some Mayans. Now many people don't realize, but the old Mayan territory was in Guatemala, and quite a large proportion of the people in Guatemala are Mayan by ancestry. And some of them practice the Mayan religion still, mixed in with a bit of Christianity. And they celebrate, and they're just celebrating like they've always done, and they're celebrating the Bacton as the start of a new era. And so you can play this video and listen to and there they are celebrating.
Enséñanos el camino de la paz y la armonía, sobre todo en tiempo.
So they're just talking about. In fact, I wish I could. Does it give you the option to show it or translate? That sounds as if it should be saying. No, it doesn't. It's like it was peace and harmony. I don't know if that's what you were saying. Anyway, that was a Mayan ceremony in Guatemala by modern Mayans, held on December 21, 2012. It was 7 years and 7 months ago. And in 2012, while all this fuss was going on, and this professor about the Mayans said the Maya never, ever said anything about the world ending at any time, much less this year. So it's sort of bizarre to be living through this time right now, when so many people seem to be worked up. And the Mayans in Guatemala, it was the same thing. People came from around the world, said, look, tell us about what's going to happen when the world ends. I said, nonsense, the world's not going to end. That's not our belief at all. So where did it come from? It was made up, it all came from a fake website, all lies. So and it was to promote the 2012 movie. And in 2009, they set up this website and they claimed that there was Institute for Human Continuity. That's made up, it doesn't exist. They said that the Mayans prophesied the end of the world. Not true. There was no end of world prophecies. They said that scientists have confirmed it. It's not science, it's just movie scripts. It's just like Star Trek or Hogwarts. Like expecting, worrying with the Vogons, or worrying about, or looking forward to the, what they called, Spock's planet, the Vulcans. And there was no risk of destruction to Earth. And then, if you went to that website, you could click to get a lottery number. But the lottery ticket did nothing. The claim of the website was that if you clicked and you got just the right number, then you would be saved from, you would be able to get a seat in a spaceship escaping Earth. So the lottery ticket did nothing, just made up, totally made up. And this fake news, all the promotion they did for it, they earned $500 million. And David Morrison said that he talked about teenagers saying they're contemplating suicide, and he says, I think when you lie on the internet and scare people, children, to make a buck, that is ethically wrong. I think many people would agree with that. You just shouldn't have done that. Mayan calendar just keeps going, and this was the 7th Bactrim was in 354 before the Christian era, and in our calendar time, then we've already been through the 12th Bactrim, happened after the Spaniards got to South America, and then we have the 13th Bactrim in 2012, the 14th will be in 2407, and then we get all the way to the first Pictune, which is the next measure up, in 4772. So their calendar is just like ours, just goes on and on and on. It goes into millions of years. They can rotate millions of years into our future. Then, and that's in the long count. And then, so another thing was a joke post by Stephen Hawking. This, I'll talk about that in a bit. So this joke post by Stephen Hawking, again as I said, the Mayans believed Earth was the back of a crocodile in a vast ocean. Modern scientists don't take this theory seriously at all. And I said they didn't think the world would end. And then this is a joke post, and it claims that in the Ethiopian calendar, and so it's actually true. This is 2012 in the Ethiopian calendar today. As in writing today, but if you go and look at the Mayan calendar, and then I've done a page which says when the Mayan calendar is, then it's the 15th of June in the Gregorian calendar. It's the 13th kin or day in the 10th urinal, in the 7th tune. The urinal is sort of like a month, 7th is like a year, and then Katun is, we haven't got any of those yet, so it's the first 13th Bactrim, that's our date in the Mayan calendar. It's nothing to do with, they don't use our word 2012. They talk about the tunes and Katuns, so it's 7 tunes. And the Ethiopian calendar, then the first day of the 13th Bactrim was December 21 in the Gregorian calendar, December 8th in the Julian calendar, so they're only 13 days out. And then 12th of Tahasus, which isn't one of our months, they don't have any of our months, in the Ethiopian calendar, which actually has 13 months. and in 2005. This is the fake news story in the Daily Mirror. And the real Mayans have said they celebrated it 7.5 years ago. So how did Paulo get it so wrong? Well, he said that every year we lose 11 days because of using the Gregorian calendar instead of the Julian calendar. But actually, he's got it back to front. We actually gain 1 day every century if the century is not a leap year in our calendar. The reason is that all centuries are leap years in the Julian calendar, but the only ones that are leap years in the Gregorian calendar are 1600, 2000, 2400, if it's divisible by 4. So the total difference was actually 13 days, not 80 years. But in any case, it all makes no difference at all, because it doesn't matter what the date is in the Gregorian calendar or the Julian calendar, because the Mayans didn't use either calendar. So the whole thing is nonsense anyway. But so then just talk a little bit about the rubbish science. So there's a claim that the Earth's crust will slip. That's impossible. Our Earth's crust is solid to a depth of nearly 3,000 kilometers, and it can't slip. The the motion of the continents is very slow motion. Of when you've got huge amounts of rock, hundreds of kilometers across, then it can flow like a liquid over very very long timescales, like millions of years. The Atlantic is only spreading apart by centimeters a year, and it does that by very, very slight changes in the position of crystals within the rocks. And very slowly it flows, and there's no friction really on those very long timescales with those very huge amounts of rock. And then the molten lava that you get from a volcano, that comes from little patches of rock that get heated up. For instance, if one continental plate slides past another, and one plate goes under another, then it heats up. That melts the rock. That creates a bit of lava, which then comes out as a volcano. And some of it is by heating from the interior, and the heat as it gets near to the surface where the pressure is less, and the hotter spots can become molten and become these little lava plumes or magma chambers, and then the magma chambers then erupt as volcanoes. But they're just tiny little, you wouldn't even see them hardly on this scale, tiny little droplets of molten lava inside. The crust itself can't move. Now some people worry about an annular eclipse. So it just so happens that there is an eclipse on the 21st of June. Eclipse is just the moon passing in front of the sun. In ancient times, then, they used to worry about this, and they worried that that they didn't realize it was the moon, because the moon isn't visible in the daytime sky. The moon is hidden, well, the moon is visible in the daytime sky when it's far from the sun, but when it gets close to the sun, if you've seen the moon in the daytime sky, you'll notice that it's sort of a half moon lit up towards the sun, and the rest is just kind of, you just see the sky. It looks like you just see blue sky, because the sky is in front of the sun, of the moon. As the moon goes towards the sun, then you get a thinner and thinner and thinner white bit, till eventually it goes away completely. That's because the moon is between you and the sun, and it's lit up from behind, so from this side it's completely black like the night sky. So the blue sky is between you and the moon, so you don't see it. As the moon comes close to the sun, and eventually in an eclipse, the moon will pass in front of the distant sun. And then, depending how far away the moon is much smaller than the sun. The sun is absolutely huge. And if you are on the Earth in just the right spot, then the light from you goes out like the light from the sun is blocked by the moon, and you get a shadow, because the sun is so much bigger than the moon, it can sort of shine past the moon. But if the moon is close to you, between you and the sun, then the moon can get close enough to block it all out. But if the moon is further away, and it depends where it is in its orbit when it goes past in front of the sun, as to whether it's further away or closer, because the orbit is elliptical. And if it's closer in its orbit, as it will be on June the 21st, then it will be too close to us to completely cover the sun. And so you get an annular eclipse. That's just too far away from us. Sorry, if the moon is far away from us, because further away things look smaller, and on June 21st in the further away part of its orbit, so it will look smaller, and so there's not enough to cover the sun. And so that's just because more distant things look smaller. So as the moon comes across, and you can't see it at all, and can come close to the sun, as it touches the sun, you see a bit of a bite into it, more of a bite, eventually get a big circular thing in the middle if you are just in the right place. Just go 100 kilometers, 200 kilometers left or right, and it won't go completely in front of it. And nothing happens. You just get a rather spectacular sight of the moon in front of the sun. You get this shadow, then the moon, all that happens, it continues, is the moon then gradually moves off over a period of an hour or so. It gradually moves away, and then that's the end of it. You just see the normal sun. There is nothing here that can harm us in any way whatsoever. It is just a shadow moving across the surface of the Earth. And this is the eclipse track. So you won't actually see it. You will see it in Africa. You'll see it in very northern part of India. You'll see it mainly in China. People will see it. So expect to see some Chinese video of it and some other places like that. We won't see it because we're too far away. So you have to be in that very, very narrow track to be able to see this effect. And it's not even a shadow because there's always light goes past. So it won't even become night as it does with a proper full eclipse. There's nothing about this remotely dangerous in any way at all. Can't do any harm to anyone. We now know. So in ancient times they would have been shouting and banging things, trying to scare away the dragon or the wolf or whatever it is they thought it was that was pulling up the sun. But we know much better now, and we know it's just the moon passing in front. And you don't need to do anything. Just wait and eventually it'll move away again. That's the end of it. So a little bit about the science. Then there's absolutely, it's not science. It's just like Star Trek or Harry Potter. The movie claims that the neutrinos from the sun, so neutrinos are invisible particles, and we have millions of them, well, thousands of them going through our body every second. But they are one of those neutrinos can go through, even travelling at the distance so fast that it goes from here to the moon in a little over a second, then travelling even for an entire year through solid lead, and it goes fast enough to go around the Earth 10 times a second or so, and it goes through, and if it keeps going at that speed for an entire year of solid lead, if you could manage somehow to find enough lead for it to go through, and only half the neutrinos would be absorbed in the lead. So these are particles that hardly interact with matter at all. And the idea that these things that go sneaking through us all the time and do nothing would melt up the Earth is absolute nonsense. And they can't change, they can't mutate. It doesn't make sense. It's like saying the electron could mutate. There have been electrons since soon after the Big Bang, and they've always been electrons, and they haven't done anything. It's the same with the neutrinos. They've always been neutrinos, and they can't do anything. They're just neutrinos. They're very small particles. So this was absolute nonsense. Neutrinos can change flavour from one kind of neutrino to another. They can't change it to something completely different. So there's no, let's say, Where's the science? Where's the evidence? There is none. There's no credible evidence for any of the assertions made in support of unusual events taking place in December 2012, and nothing happened. It was just scripts, like from Star Trek. And here's Dara O'Brien, a comedian, making fun of this idea that neutrinos could have mutated. If you're feeling in a light mood, you could have a play of that clip, and the electrons are angry. And the Mayans, of course, knew nothing about neutrinos. They knew nothing. They didn't know Earth was a planet. They thought that Earth was the back of a crocodile. And so this is what they thought. They thought we were lying on the back of something like this. So if they'd worried about something happening to Earth, then about the only thing they could worry about was the crocodile choosing to dive into the sea. They thought that we were on the back of a crocodile floating in a vast sea. This entire thing about neutrinos mutating, obviously Mayans couldn't think like that. And so, I never understood why in 2012 millions of people worldwide suddenly decided that Mayans were an ancient civilization with a superior understanding of astronomy over us. They didn't have telescopes, and they thought we lived on the back of a crocodile or a turtle. You don't go to ancient people for cutting-edge astronomy. You can go to them for cutting-edge insights on many other things, maybe in how to behave, in philosophy, in understanding life, in ethics. There can be lots of things that they can teach us. But this particular matter of astronomy and eclipses and whether anything could happen to our planet and so on, then we have vastly superior understanding. We can investigate our universe in ways that they couldn't even dream of. And governments don't hide news of disasters. As far as I know, no government has ever hidden a prediction of a future disaster. And what would the point be? They are the ones who try to get people to evacuate after volcanic eruption warning or hurricane warning. So short summary, nothing happened. Mayans never said anything would happen. It's just a day for celebrating a new era, just as we have a new year, a new century celebrations. It was followed by the first two, what they call these things? The first, whatever it is, kin, is it? And then second, and then third, and so on in the new era. Where is it? The first kin, yes. And then the second and the third, and now we're on the 7th tune, and the 10th urinal, and the 13th kin. So, I hope this helps some of you be a bit less scared. There's absolutely nothing to be scared of here at all. There never was. There never was any reason to be scared in 2012, and it's not even the start of a new era for the Mayans now. It's nothing. Absolutely nothing. Just fake news. If only Google were to say that these are fake news stories, have some kind of label on them saying this is fake news. They should have a big label, not saying top stories. They say top stories in brackets, fake news. That would be much more accurate. Top stories, brackets, fake news.